Hey everybody, hope this finds you doing better than the crypto markets currently. As you can see, Bitcoin is currently down over 11%, trading at around 76,700. We have Ethereum down over 18% over the past week, currently just under $2,300. We have XRP down over 13%, Solana down almost 15%. It did breach, I believe, $100 at some point over the last couple of days. We see Dogecoin down 13%, and Cardano has been knocked down from the 10 spot and is now sitting at number 11, and they are down currently 15%, trading at under 29 cents. So let's go and see what is going on. Let's have a closer look at Bitcoin. As you can see, Bitcoin is currently trading under 77,000. It did actually breach 76,000 on Saturday, the 31st, and we are going to see what happens as we start this week. As we look at the East, the Asia markets, what they end up doing, and if they're going to continue the sell-off when it comes to Bitcoin, and we'll also get into the other commodities, gold and silver, in one moment. But you can see that basically since the 28th, 29th, when Bitcoin hit around 90,000, it has basically been a cascade on the downward trend since then. And now people are believing that Bitcoin could be trending downwards towards 60,000, maybe even 50,000. So let's go ahead and take a look at the larger picture here. As you can see, Bitcoin is in that $76,000 range right now. Now we're looking to see if it can hold in the $70,000 range. If we do breach 70,000, there's definitely a possibility that we can get back towards 50,000 or so. Now that's a possibility because we had this accumulation range for most of 2024 between 50 and 70,000, and this was a pretty boring time frame, but it was a great time to accumulate Bitcoin because you see the people who accumulated during this time period are still up currently. Now, could we get back to this range? Absolutely. And could we chop in this range for a while, maybe even for most of 2026? That's definitely a possibility as well. Nobody has a crystal ball and knows exactly what's going to happen, but we want to make sure that you have an understanding of the volatility that is inherent when it comes to Bitcoin. That's just what it is. When you go back and look in prior years and we look at the all-time highs back when they were made in 2021, we actually had a double top. And once we had that final top in November of 2021, we had a precipitous decline all the way through 2022, leading into 2023, where we finally hit that bottom towards the end of 2022. And then we saw this massive run up, basically from around 16,000 all the way up to 126,000 over the next couple of years. So we see the type of run that Bitcoin can take on the way up, but also can take a massive drawdown. So it's something to be reminded of when it comes to Bitcoin and the volatility that comes and is a part of this asset. That's just what it is. But over the long term, when we continue to go back and zoom out, we go back. This is the 2018, 2017 time frame when Bitcoin hit an all-time high right at the beginning. I believe it was January of 2018, and then we saw a precipitous downcline all the way going through until basically for a full year, until it started moving back up in 2019, and then really had that major run up once we hit that 2020 pandemic drawdown. And then you see the run up from around $4,000 all the way up to $69,000 over the next 2 years. So we could be in this next cycle where Bitcoin sees a year or so of choppiness and a lot of volatility towards the downside, and then we could continue to follow the trend of having exponential returns going into the next several years. So if we continue to follow the 4-year cycle, many people believe that it's broken. It has yet to be seen. We shall see. We did have a break in terms of 2025 not being a positive return year, but we did hit all-time highs in 2025. So that continues to stay on trend. But could we see a bounce back in all-time highs in 2026? Right now, it's not looking like we may do that, but who knows? Nobody knows what the future holds. So obviously you want to make sure that you continue to do your research, learn as much as you can about the asset, have an understanding of what you're investing in. But we believe in the long term, when we look at it years and years from now, that Bitcoin will be much higher than where it is today. But obviously, do your own research. So if we look at some of the other commodities, we see that gold has been on a massive run basically over the last couple of years, particularly in 2025. It's had exponential returns, but we did see a drawdown over the past week. Friday, January 30th is when we saw a drawdown of about 10 to 12% when it comes to gold. And then we saw a massive drawdown, and you see this major gap down. Silver actually went down over 30% intraday on Friday the 30th. So we'll see if there's going to be any type of recovery, but anything that goes up at some point, it must come down. So people who are starting to buy in this range definitely were taking a risk, because silver had been going on such amazing run over the past 12 months that at some point it was going to have to come down a little bit. Now, normally you don't see it moving down this much. A lot of people are saying, okay, well, look at gold and silver. It's basically acting like crypto when you're having these type of 20 plus 30% single day drawdowns. And we see that this was a massive drawdown for silver, obviously, over the past couple of days. So we'll look to see what happens, and if it's able to recover a little bit and maybe start its move back up. Could there be a double top? Who knows? Or could this be the sign that people are starting to sell off their gains from silver and either putting it into cash on the sidelines or looking to switch over to other assets? Obviously, time will tell, and we'll keep you posted on that. But we want to make sure that you have an understanding of Bitcoin and some of the major corrections that come from Bitcoin. But we've shown this chart before, but now it's showing the most recent decline. We've now dropped about 40% from the all-time highs that we hit in October of 2025. So we've reached 40%. We've had drawdowns as much as 94%, but that was in its very early days in 2011. We had also an 85% drawdown in 2013 to 2015. Then we also saw one, the most recent was a 78% drawdown, and that was in that 2021-2022 timeframe. So is it a possibility that we can continue to go down more into that 70% range? Absolutely. So definitely something to keep on your radar just in case. Also, when we take a look and take a zoom out, everybody's been very excited about what's been going on with gold and what's been going on with silver. But there was a long time, many years, that gold and silver just kind of stayed in a range and didn't really do much and didn't have much return. But when you look at it compared to Bitcoin, even with this massive run that it's gone on over the past 12 months, you can see that Bitcoin has still outperformed gold and silver and the QQQ, which is the index of tech stocks, and is a representative of the major tech stocks, including the Magnificent Seven. And you can see that Bitcoin has more than doubled the return of gold, doing over 429% in the last 3 years. So basically, this is from the end of 2022 into January of 2026, and basically during that 3-year time span, Bitcoin still outperformed all of these assets. So definitely something to consider. Want to make sure that you have a general understanding. It's not just about what happened over the past day, over the past week. It's, you want to make sure that you're having an idea of what happens over a month time frame, several months, a year, several years. What happens? That's how you start to get an understanding of an asset. When you look at its historical performance, it's definitely not indicative of what is going to happen in the future, but it can at least give you an idea of the possibilities. So, and one other thing to make sure that you have an idea, or at least have a general understanding of, when it comes to the macro, we talk about also understanding macroeconomics and what's happening with the global news and what's happening, in the economic landscape. You definitely want to make sure you have an understanding of that as well, because it does tend to rhyme when it comes to what happens with these assets. So when we look at the US dollar, a lot of times it can control what's happening with regards to international trade and how money flows from one country to another. And we're seeing that the dollar has been weakening over the past couple of years, and a lot of it tends to coincide with the interest rates and the monetary policy that comes from the Federal Reserve. So when they stopped hiking, so you can't see the dates here at the bottom, but this is the end of 2022, and this is when the Federal Reserve, the U.S. Federal Reserve, decided to stop the rate hikes, because we had and this actually coincides exactly with when we were after the pandemic, or around the pandemic, I should say, when the Federal Reserve decided to hike the interest rates. It was the fastest rate hiking cycle ever, and you can see that the dollar coincided with that by becoming super strong during this time frame. And then once they stopped hiking the rates, the interest rates, then the dollar becomes a little bit weaker, and we're noticing that this is potentially leading towards a bottom. Could it continue to go down? That's a possibility. Now, when this happens, when the dollar becomes weaker, that means that it's cheaper to buy U.S. assets. You see a lot more money flooding into the U.S. dollar, and a lot of the risk assets, including Bitcoin and gold and some of the other so-called risk-on assets like tech stocks, tend to have more investment, because with the dollar going down, then there's more dollars in circulation. And so we're seeing, and we have seen, that risk assets, including tech stocks, including Bitcoin, has done well over the last couple of years, particularly in 2023 leading up to 2026. And that's basically this time when the dollar started to go down that we saw that those assets really had an amazing run. So if we start to see the dollar start to creep back up again, then that could be an indication that we could be going into a bear market with some of the risk on assets. Now, we're already starting to see a bear market, obviously, with Bitcoin, but we could potentially see that with tech stocks if we start to see that the dollar gets stronger. But right now, we have no indication of that. It's still trending downwards. So, but something just to consider when we look at the macro factors. So, of course, we appreciate you taking the time to check us out here on YouTube. Make sure to also check us out on Instagram as well as X. We want to make sure to keep you on top of what's going on with Bitcoin and emerging markets. Thank you so much for watching. We look forward to linking up with you soon on the network chain. Take care. Bye-bye.